My name is Clara Bennett, and the worst moment of my life came with a ding. One single notification. One message. That's all it took to destroy 15 years of marriage, and to light a fire inside me that would change everything. It was a Thursday morning. I remember that detail so clearly because it was the same morning I'd made Daniel's favorite breakfast. Eggs over easy, sourdough toast, a little coffee with too much cream. The kind of breakfast you make when you still believe in your marriage. He kissed me on the cheek, said, "See you tonight, babe," and walked out the door like everything was normal. 10 minutes later, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone, still warm from his touch, and read the message. "This isn't working anymore. I've filed for divorce. Please don't contact me." I blinked. Read it again. "No, I'm sorry. No, let's talk." No warning, just a cold sentence that shattered my world like glass. And as if that wasn't enough, not even 15 minutes later, I got a second message. This one, from my bank. "Alert. Withdrawal of $274,832.19 completed. Our savings, gone. Every account, every cent." My hands were shaking, my vision blurred. I called the bank in a panic, but it was too late. The transfers had already been processed. Daniel had planned this. Quietly, precisely, like a thief in the night. And just like that, the man I'd loved, trusted, built a life with, vanished. No goodbye, no explanation, just an empty account and a broken heart. But here's the thing. He didn't break me. He woke me up. He thought I'd cry. He thought I'd crumble. But instead, I started planning. Silently. Smartly. Because if Daniel thought he was good at disappearing, he had no idea what I was capable of. If you were in my shoes, would you let him get away with it? Or would you fight back? Tell me in the comments before we continue. And if this story already has your heart racing, subscribe. You're going to want to hear how it all ends. People love to say, looking back, the signs were always there. And maybe they were. But when you're in it, when your heart is on the line, the signs don't look like warnings. They look like noise you learn to ignore. I met Daniel when I was 27. I'd just landed a big client at my small design studio and was celebrating with a friend at a quiet bar in Brooklyn. He was there for a business dinner. Sleek suit, loosened tie, glass of whiskey in hand. He noticed me first. He came over during a lull in conversation and said, "I don't usually interrupt people, but your laugh just saved me from the most boring meeting of my life." I smiled, probably blushed. He asked if he could sit, and that was it. From that night on, Daniel made everything feel easy. He was older, 35, confident in a way that wasn't loud. He listened. He asked real questions. He remembered little things I said. I'd dated my share of artists and dreamers, men who talked a lot and did very little. Daniel was different, grounded, solid, like someone I could build a future with. And for a long time, we did. He took me to weekend getaways in Maine, surprised me with flowers on Thursdays, cooked on Sundays. He helped me paint my first office, held my hand when my mother was in the hospital, never forgot an anniversary, never raised his voice. He was, by all appearances, the kind of man every woman dreams of marrying. We moved in together after 9 months, married 2 years later. Our wedding was in Vermont, under a golden October sky. My dress was simple. He cried when he saw me walk down the aisle. Everyone told me how lucky I was, and I believed them. We were that couple, the ones with matching luggage, a joint savings plan, homemade pasta nights. We made spreadsheets together, dreamed of buying a lake house. I had a Pinterest board full of baby names we never used. Daniel always said, "What's mine is yours, Clara. That's what marriage means." So I let go of my separate account. I let him handle the finances. It wasn't that I was careless. I just trusted him. We both worked hard, and I assumed we were saving together, planning together, living together. But looking back now, there were shifts. Small at first. He started taking more business trips, stopped texting during the day like he used to, became protective of his phone, changed his passcode, turned the screen away when I walked by. I asked about it once, half joking. He smiled and said, "You're not becoming one of those paranoid wives, are you?" So I laughed it off, because I didn't want to be that woman, the one who checks messages, follows her husband, doubts what used to feel like certainty. I wanted to be the woman he married, the one who trusted, who believed, who built a life without needing constant proof of loyalty. But trust can be a dangerous thing when it's blind. By our 10th anniversary, things had shifted enough that I could feel it in my bones, but not enough that I could explain it out loud. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't distant in the obvious ways. He still kissed me goodbye, still said, "I love you." But something was off. There was a silence between us that hadn't been there before. A weight. And the truth is, I blamed myself. I told myself he was tired, that we were just in a lull. That marriage, like anything, has seasons, and that the warm, easy version of us would return if I just gave it time. I doubled down, cooked more, planned little surprises, wore the perfume he used to say he loved, all the while ignoring the growing knot in my stomach, the one that whispered, "Something is wrong." But I didn't listen. I chose to believe in the man who once looked me in the eyes and said, "I will never be the one who hurts you." And that choice would cost me everything. It's strange how the worst moments of your life don't always come with thunder or sirens. Sometimes they arrive in total silence. Like the moment I found out my husband had been stealing from me. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Daniel was working from home, something he rarely did, pacing around the living room in his headset, whispering terms like asset restructure and international leverage that meant absolutely nothing to me. He was always careful with his laptop, always shut it, always logged out. I used to joke that he guarded it more fiercely than his wedding ring. But that day, he slipped. He got up to take a call on the balcony and left his laptop open, not minimized, not locked, just sitting there on the kitchen counter, glowing. At first, I didn't move. I told myself, "Clara, don't look. Respect his privacy." But something about the way he rushed outside, something about the tone in his voice. My gut didn't whisper this time. It screamed. I walked over, slowly, heart already pounding, and glanced at the screen. An email was open. Subject line: "Final transfer confirmation, encrypted PDF attached." I clicked. What I saw made my mouth go dry. A wire transfer in Daniel's name. An offshore account I'd never heard of. $147,000 gone. Attached were 3 documents, one a bank confirmation, one a summary of assets labeled Stage 3, and another marked Hold until completion. I stared at the screen, unable to blink. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan, a carefully coordinated financial betrayal, happening right under my nose. I scrolled. More emails, more transfers, some as recent as the day before, others going back 6 months. All sent to the same shell company names, same offshore banking network, all masked as business services. The worst part? I recognized some of the amounts. He'd told me he was putting them in savings. For our future, for the house, for retirement. I backed away from the counter just as I heard the balcony door creak open. He was finishing his call, still talking, still smiling, as if nothing in the world was wrong. And in that moment, standing in my own kitchen with the scent of his coffee still in the air, I felt like I had left my body. I smiled at him. I asked him if he wanted lunch. I went back to my desk and finished a logo for a client. But inside me, something enormous was crumbling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I did what I always do when I feel powerless. I went quiet, and then I started digging. That night, while he slept beside me, I stayed awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. My heart was racing, my hands shaking. I kept replaying moments from the past year. The late meetings, the new phone password, the dismissive tone whenever I asked about our finances. How many times had I told myself, "You're overthinking, Clara. Don't be dramatic." But I wasn't dramatic. I was being deceived. And now, I had proof. The next morning, I called my bank under the pretense of needing a statement. I requested full transaction records from all our accounts. I started writing things down: dates, amounts, account numbers. Then I called Paige, an old college friend who worked in corporate law. I didn't tell her everything yet, just enough to ask questions like, if someone moved marital funds without consent, is that illegal? Can you track money through shell companies? What happens if it's already overseas? She was cautious, but kind, and she told me what I needed to hear. It won't be easy, but if you're patient and smart, It's not impossible. And just like that, something inside me clicked into place. Daniel thought he was being clever. He thought I'd never notice. He thought I'd fall apart. And maybe, for a moment, I almost did. But in that moment, I stopped being his wife and started becoming something else entirely. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Because you don't interrupt a thief in the middle of a robbery. You wait until he thinks he got away with it. And then, you take everything back. I didn't leave him that night. I wish I could say I packed a bag, slammed a door, screamed. But I didn't. I crawled into bed next to him, just like every night. Except this time, I knew I was lying next to a stranger. He fell asleep in minutes, like he always did, breathing slow, peaceful, like a man with nothing to hide. And I lay there staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my eyes dry but burning. I couldn't cry. Not yet. The next morning, I moved through the house like I was underwater, fed the dog, opened emails, answered a client call, smiled when Daniel came downstairs, asked how he slept. I don't even remember his answer. I wasn't listening, because inside, something was tearing, and I didn't want him to see it. That whole week felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from, a bad play I had to keep performing in. Every corner of our home whispered betrayal. The couch we picked out together, the painting we bought on our anniversary trip to Charleston, the wine glasses we used to toast us on random Tuesdays. I wanted to scream. I wanted to destroy something. But mostly, I wanted to understand how. How could someone who shared your bed, your secrets, your soul, look you in the eye and lie without even flinching? I kept going through the motions, but my mind never stopped. I started remembering all the things I gave up for him, the promotions I turned down so I could travel with him during his relocations, the friends I drifted from because he never liked their energy, the inheritance my mother left me, $40,000, that I used to help us renovate the kitchen, because we're investing in our future, he said. It wasn't just the money, it was the time, the love, the trust, years of it, poured into someone who saw me as nothing more than, what? A convenience? A stepping stone? I went back and read that text again, the one that ended it all. Cold, empty. This isn't working anymore. I've filed for divorce. Please don't contact me. As if I were a subscription he'd grown tired of. As if I didn't deserve even a conversation. That was when the dam finally broke. I went into the guest bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor. And I cried. Not the quiet kind of crying. Not a few tears down the cheek. I sobbed. Ugly, shaking, gasping sobs that came from someplace deeper than I even knew existed. My whole body trembled. My throat burned. I covered my mouth with my hands so he wouldn't hear. I cried for the woman I used to be, the woman who believed in forever, the woman who trusted too much and questioned too little. And when it was over, when I had no tears left, I sat in silence for a long time. I looked at myself in the mirror, eyes swollen, skin blotchy, a shadow of who I used to be. But even through that pain, something else began to rise. A thought. Sharp. Clear. He thinks you're weak. That was it. That was the sentence that changed everything. Daniel thought I was broken, that I'd fade away quietly, accept whatever scraps he threw my way, and disappear. He had no idea who he married. I wasn't going to confront him in anger. I wasn't going to beg or scream or try to make him feel guilty. Men like Daniel don't feel guilt. They only understand consequences. So I wiped my face. I stood up, and I made myself a promise. You won't see it coming, but you'll never forget it. That was the last day I cried for Daniel. The next time I looked in that mirror, I wouldn't see a woman scorned. I'd see a woman ready to take everything back, piece by piece, and not with noise, with precision. Revenge isn't born in rage. It's born in silence. In the quiet moments after the storm, when your heart has stopped screaming and your mind starts whispering, now, we begin. That's what happened to me. I stopped crying, stopped checking his texts, stopped waiting for a knock on the door or some apology that would never come. Instead, I began to observe. Daniel was still pretending to be the good husband, still making his morning coffee, still smiling when he asked me about my work. I played along, better than he ever could have imagined. I smiled back, laughed when I had to, let him think I was accepting it, because men like Daniel make one fatal mistake. They confuse silence with surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. I was planning. The first thing I did was reach out to Paige, my friend from college, the corporate attorney I had quietly called during my breakdown. This time, I told her everything: the email I saw, the offshore accounts, the transfers, the betrayal. She listened, then said something that would change the way I thought about all of it. If he's hiding marital assets, you have a case, but you have to be careful, smart, quiet. That's when the idea started forming. I wasn't going to confront him in our kitchen. I wasn't going to send a dramatic email or show up screaming at his office. I was going to build a case, one he couldn't escape. With Paige's help, I began collecting everything: bank records, transaction histories, copies of old tax returns, every document I could get without alerting him. I signed up for a new cloud storage service, created a password even I wouldn't be able to guess twice, labeled every file with boring names like Invoice 2003, so if he ever looked, he'd be too bored to click. I started reviewing everything he had access to, cross-checking statements, searching the names of the shell companies he used. What I found made my skin crawl. There were at least 4 accounts I'd never seen, 2 properties purchased in other people's names, and 1 fake investment firm that led straight to a company registered in the Cayman Islands. It was all right there. Years of manipulation. A carefully constructed plan to disappear with everything we built together, without leaving a trace. But now, I had the trace. I had all of it. And I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. Daniel was too connected, too careful. I needed to hit him somewhere else. His ego. Daniel didn't just love money. He loved admiration. He was about to be promoted to partner at his firm, and his public image was everything. Reputation was his currency. He loved being seen as powerful, trustworthy, respectable. And so I knew, if I wanted to destroy him, I didn't need to scream. I just needed to let the truth slip into the right hands, at the right moment. If you were in my position, holding proof of betrayal and fraud, would you stay quiet, or would you burn it all to the ground? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. But first, I needed more. So I booked a consultation with a forensic accountant, a woman named Valerie, sharp as a razor and twice as cold. She didn't ask many questions. She just nodded, took my files, and said, "Give me a week. I'll map every dollar he moved." For the first time in months, I exhaled. Because now, I wasn't alone. And the best part? Daniel had no idea. He still kissed me on the cheek every morning, still told me he'd be home late, still made dumb little jokes about retiring early and traveling the world. I smiled, agreed, even made him his favorite dinner one night, roasted salmon with garlic potatoes. He thought I was healing, but really, I was building the blade he'd never see coming. The strangest part of revenge is how peaceful it can feel. Once I had a plan, once I knew exactly what I was going to do, the rage started to fade, the sadness too. What replaced it wasn't joy, it was focus. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was calculating. Daniel, of course, thought I had moved on. I let him believe it. In fact, I encouraged it. I stopped asking questions, stopped looking tired, started dressing up a little again, laughing at his dumb jokes, going out to yoga classes I didn't even like. He thought I was healing. He didn't know I was rehearsing. Every day, I played the role of the recovering wife. I kept the house clean. I updated him on my work. I even started talking about a possible vacation in the spring, something to reset us. He smiled, kissed my forehead, said he was proud of me for handling everything with grace. I nearly laughed in his face. What he didn't know was that grace can be a blade in the right hands. Behind the scenes, I was in daily contact with Valerie, the forensic accountant. She had uncovered everything: the exact amounts, the recipient accounts, even the routing of funds through his fake shell corporations. I had it all in black and white, and Paige, my legal advisor, had already drafted the early motions for asset recovery and evidence of fraud. We weren't ready to strike yet, but we were close. Still, I kept the performance going. I even started talking to him again about money. Small things. A grocery budget, ideas for a joint investment. I watched him get comfortable. Too comfortable. One night over dinner, he said something that stuck in my mind like a splinter. "I was really worried about you for a while, Clara. But you're strong. You always bounce back." I smiled. I guess I'm just not the type to fall apart. And that was the truth, because while he slept peacefully each night, I was reviewing timelines, preparing emails, cross-referencing files. I knew when he was planning his next big transfer. I knew where the money was going. I even knew the name of the lawyer he'd hired, one that specialized in quiet exits. He thought he was playing chess, but the board he was standing on? I built it. I also started documenting everything, every interaction, every slip of the tongue. I kept a journal, handwritten, with timestamps and notes, in case I needed to use it later. I wasn't sure if I'd go public, but I knew I wanted the option, because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about erasure. Daniel hadn't just stolen from me. He'd tried to erase me, from our accounts, from our home, from our future. He wanted to walk away with everything we built and pretend I never existed. And for a moment, he succeeded. But that moment was over. Now, I had the truth. I had the tools. And soon, I'd have the perfect opportunity. It came unexpectedly. He told me he'd be traveling to Chicago for a few meetings, and he'd be gone for 3 days. He seemed excited. Too excited. He made a joke about ordering room service and sleeping in a hotel king bed without me stealing the covers. That night, I checked his email again. I still had access, thanks to a shared device we once set up years ago, and he'd forgotten all about. There was no hotel reservation, no flight confirmation, no meetings. But there was a dinner reservation, for 2, at a 5-star restaurant, under a fake last name. So that was it. Not only had he robbed me, he was rewarding himself with someone else, using the money he stole from me, and that somehow made everything sharper. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It wasn't even just emotional. It was personal, intentional, cruel. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, he would never stop unless I made him. And I would. Not with fists, not with threats, but with one quiet, perfect move that would pull the entire ground out from under him. Have you ever pretended to be fine, just to plan your comeback in silence? Tell me in the comments. And stay with me, because the most shocking part is still coming. I thought I had seen the worst of Daniel. The lies, the theft, the arrogance. But I was wrong, because when people think they've won, that's when they show you who they really are. The night before he was supposed to leave for his business trip, Daniel was glowing. He opened a bottle of wine. He made us dinner, something he hadn't done in months. He even played one of our old playlists from when we were first dating. It would have been sweet if I didn't already know the truth. I smiled through it all, watched him toast to new beginnings, watched him walk into our bedroom and hum to himself while folding the same button-up shirt he wore on our honeymoon. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because I had something better than rage now. I had clarity. After he went to bed, I went back to his email. I had learned how to move like a ghost in that inbox, never clicking too long, always covering my tracks. But that night, something new appeared. A reply from someone I hadn't seen before. The name wasn't familiar, Sophie Lang, but the tone was unmistakable. "It's finally happening. I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself. Can't wait to wake up next to you next weekend." My heart stopped. I clicked on the thread. Dozens of messages. Sweet ones. Intimate ones. Explicit ones. Some dated from over a year ago. He hadn't just found someone new recently. He had been with her while he was with me, while he was building our new kitchen, holding my hand at my father's memorial, pretending to plan for our future. And then I saw it. A forwarded real estate document, a deposit confirmation, and a subject line that made my stomach twist. Final payment. Lakeview Cottage transfer. In Sophie's name. That house. The dream house we talked about buying for years. He had bought it. Not for us. For her. With my money. That was the moment something snapped inside me. Not a breakdown. I'd already had that. This was different. A switch. A locking into place. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the quiet wind outside the window, and I whispered to myself, You don't just get to walk away from this, Daniel. Not with my money, not with my dreams, not with her. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I finished organizing every piece of evidence I had. Dozens of documents, bank records, legal files, offshore statements, emails, the real estate paperwork. I put them into folders, both digital and physical. One to give to my lawyer, one to give to his firm. That was the part I hadn't told Paige yet. Because here's the thing. Daniel worked for a financial company with a zero-tolerance policy for ethical breaches. Any sign of fraud, dishonesty, or undisclosed assets. And not only would they revoke his upcoming partnership, they'd terminate him on the spot. The best part? The partners of the firm were all obsessed with image. They didn't want drama. They wanted distance. So I wrote a letter. Anonymous, direct, factual, no emotion. To whom it may concern, attached is documentation linking Mr. Daniel Carter to financial misconduct involving marital assets, unreported accounts, and concealed offshore activity. For verification, please cross-reference the attached dates with internal audits. This information is being shared in the interest of corporate transparency, and I sent it, just after midnight, with every attachment Valerie had verified. Then I made a second copy. This one for Sophie. I didn't care about her. Not really. She wasn't innocent, but she also wasn't my problem. Still, I wanted her to know exactly who she was getting, so I printed everything, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to her new cottage. I even wrote a note on top in black pen. Thought you should know how he paid for the house. Clara. By the time the sun rose, everything was in motion. And Daniel? He was packing a suitcase, humming, completely unaware that within 24 hours, the life he built on lies would start collapsing, piece by piece. The morning Daniel left for Chicago, he kissed me on the cheek and said he'd call me from the hotel. I nodded, smiled, handed him his suitcase, and waved from the porch as he pulled away. He didn't see the envelope tucked in the passenger seat, the one I slipped in while he went to get his charger. It had no return address, just his name. Inside, a full copy of everything. Every bank record, every email, every offshore transaction, a summary of potential federal violations. I included a single note. You took everything from me. Now watch what happens next. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't care if he opened it, because by the time he would feel the weight of what I'd done, the consequences would already be unfolding. He arrived in Chicago at noon. At 2:43 p.m., I got the first message from Paige. It's happening. His firm is conducting an emergency audit. Someone leaked the documents. At 4:12 p.m., he's suspended, effective immediately. And at 7:06 p.m., termination confirmed. Full investigation pending. You're protected. I stared at those messages for a long time, not smiling, not crying, just still. He was done. The man who once told me I always land on my feet had finally fallen, and for the first time, there was no one beneath him to break the fall. I found out later that the firm had acted swiftly. They wanted no affiliation with scandal, and the evidence was overwhelming. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, unauthorized asset movement, a clear violation of the ethics clause he had signed years ago. His upcoming partnership? Gone. His reputation? Shattered. His financial security? Frozen, pending legal review. But it wasn't over. Because 2 days later, Sophie left him. She hadn't called me, but I knew the letter had arrived. A friend of mine who lived near the Lakeview property told me she'd seen Daniel pacing on the porch alone, phone in hand, yelling at no one. She moved out the next day. I don't know what she said to him. I don't care. All I know is that the house went up for sale within the week. And Daniel? He came back to New York, but not to our home. By then, I had already filed for divorce. On my terms. With all the documentation. With my lawyer leading the charge. His legal team tried to negotiate, to reduce the terms, delay the proceedings, intimidate me. But they were working with a different version of Clara now. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't flinch. I let the documents speak. I let the numbers speak. And they spoke loudly. In the final settlement, I was awarded full ownership of the house, a court-ordered repayment agreement for all missing marital assets, and a formal acknowledgement of financial misconduct, sealed but valid in future litigation. I didn't need to destroy him publicly. He did that to himself. People like Daniel don't need to be pushed. They just need to be exposed. And when they are, they unravel all on their own. He tried to reach out once. A voicemail. "Clara, I don't know what happened. I don't even know who you are anymore." He was right. He didn't know who I was. Because the version of me he thought would crumble, disappear, fade quietly into the background, that woman was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, calmer, a woman who no longer needed to be loved by a man to know her worth. After everything was finalized, I changed my number, deleted every photo, repainted the walls of our house, redesigned every room, not because I needed to erase the past, but because I was building something that was finally mine. The first night I slept alone in that space. No tension in the air, no secrets clinging to the furniture. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not joy, not relief, just peace. A quiet knowing that I had faced the fire, walked through it, and come out whole, not untouched, but whole. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is walking away with everything you were told you'd never have, and knowing that the person who tried to break you will spend the rest of their life realizing they failed. There's something strange about peace when you haven't felt it in a long time. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or fireworks. It creeps in quietly, through an open window, in the middle of the night, when the world has finally stopped spinning. For me, peace looked like standing barefoot in my own kitchen. No tension, no lies, just silence. After Daniel's fall, after the emails, the firings, the legal procedures, there was nothing left to chase. No more schemes to uncover, no more layers of betrayal to peel back. Everything had been said, everything had been done, and for the first time in years, there was space. I started filling that space with things that were mine, not just legally, emotionally. I took back my home, repainted the walls, donated the furniture he chose, burned the old planner where I used to write his schedules in my handwriting. I bought new sheets, crisp, white, untouched by memory. There was something almost sacred about starting over that way, quietly, slowly, without explanation or fanfare, just choosing, day after day, to stop living in someone else's story. I didn't talk about Daniel much after that. Not to friends, not to family. I didn't need to. The truth was enough, and it had already done its work. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. That part of the journey had passed. What I wanted now was wholeness, to feel myself again, to remember who I was before I began shrinking to fit into someone else's world. It wasn't easy. Some mornings I still woke up with the echo of his voice in my head, the way he used to say, "You worry too much," or, "Why do you always assume the worst?" And I'd have to remind myself, it wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. The kind of instinct women are taught to ignore, to smile through, to apologize for, but not anymore. Now I trust that voice inside me. I listen to it. I honor it. Because that voice is me. It's the same voice that told me to look deeper, to stay calm, to fight smart, to rebuild. Not just what he took, but what I had slowly given away over the years. My voice, my time, my softness, my fire. I remember one afternoon, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting on the porch, sipping tea. Just me and the sound of birds and wind and the distant hum of the city I had started to fall in love with again. And I thought, this is it. This is freedom. Not just the absence of him, but the presence of me, whole, wiser, not unscarred, but proud of every scar. Would I trust again? I think so. Not easily, not blindly, but I believe in love, real love, not the kind that flatters you when you're useful, then discards you when you become inconvenient. Not the kind that erases, manipulates, or controls. The kind that stays when things get hard. The kind that celebrates who you are, not who you're willing to become for someone else's comfort. But if that love never comes, I'll be okay. Because the greatest thing I ever did wasn't exposing Daniel, or winning in court, or watching him lose everything. The greatest thing I ever did was choosing myself. And once you do that, Once you stand in your own strength, without apology or explanation, no one can ever take it from you again. So to the woman listening right now, maybe holding back tears, maybe sitting in the middle of her own unraveling, you're not weak. You're not foolish. You are not to blame for someone else's betrayal. You are becoming. And when you rise, and you will, you won't just survive it. You'll walk away whole. That's my story. It started with a text message and an empty bank account, and ended with me standing taller than I ever thought I could. I didn't share all this for pity. I didn't tell it so that you'd hate Daniel or admire what I did. I told it because I know, deep down, that someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe you. Maybe you're sitting in your own version of that kitchen, wondering how everything changed so fast. Maybe you just found out something you can't unsee. Maybe you're still in the phase where you're pretending everything's fine, because you don't know what else to do. If that's where you are, I see you, and I want you to know. This doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning. You are allowed to fall apart, and still come back stronger. You are allowed to feel everything, the grief, the rage, the confusion, and still build something beautiful from the ashes. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. One step, one truth, one choice at a time. And when the time comes for you to rise, rise fully, without apology, without asking permission, because the version of you that comes after this, she's going to be unstoppable. Thank you for listening to my story. And now, I want to hear yours. Have you ever had to start over? Have you ever had to choose yourself after being broken by someone you loved? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Sometimes we heal by helping others find their own strength. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me, because there are so many more stories still waiting to be told. Until next time, take care of your heart, and never forget who you are.